CJ, can you hear me through this microphone?
I said that one thing. Oh,
Okay.
thanks for the warning.
For joining us.
He should be there in a second. I kind of had him hung up in the hallway.
Oh, okay. All right. All right, there's Ron. All right, Tony, are we all set to record and go?
Yes, sir. Everything's ready and everything's recording.
Great, thank you. Then why don't I call this meeting to order. This is a special city council meeting of Lincoln City, and it's Wednesday, September 2nd at 10 a.m. And for just a reminder, this was originally scheduled as a work session, but is now a special session, a special city council meeting. And that took 4 or more counselors to request that change, and that's been accomplished. So we're in, it is actually a special city council meeting. Let me acknowledge Roll, who's in attendance. We have Mitch Parsons. We have Rick Mark, Judy Casper, Riley Hoagland, Deanna Hinton, and myself, Dick Anderson. So we have first up public comments, and I'm assuming they've come in both physically in the chamber, as Tony indicated, and Ron, you've got some too, I'm assuming. Okay, you're still on mute. I'm going to go ahead and why don't we take care of the chamber first? Tony, if you could have somebody who's there, if they want to come up.
Yes, so I'm going to escort folks to the laptop we have, and then get them set up, and we can get going on this. So.
All right.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. Good morning. I'm Lori Arsatorres, Executive Director of the Lincoln City Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak today on behalf of the lodging property members of the Lincoln City Chamber of Commerce. I've been in contact with lodging members, and we are urging you to not re-implement the 24-hour cleaning hold. Property owners and managers fully understand and appreciate the need and importance of thoroughly cleaning and sterilizing their respective properties in order to keep staff and visitors safe, plus avoid a costly outbreak. If the 24-hour hold was a proven way to combat the virus, there would not be a question whether it should be implemented. However, conflicting reports have been received regarding how long the virus can live on surfaces. Therefore, it's illogical to conclude that the 24-hour hold will have any positive bearing or effects on preventing the spread of the virus. We appreciate your hard work on behalf of the residents of Lincoln City and understand that the #1 goal is to lessen the spread of the virus. However, we need to consider the financial impacts to the businesses who are trying hard to recover from the shutdown. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
And we have another citizen. Good. We have another citizen, David with Captain Cook in.
All right, thank you. Good morning, council members. My name is David Fott. I'm one of the owners of Captain Cook Inn here in town. And just wanted to say that for all of us, it's been a very challenging year. With the closure that we had earlier in this year, of course, it was financially very difficult on us all. And going to the 24-hour hold again, that will be a financial burden to the business owners. Plus, it impacts the employees because their income gets cut down quite a bit. So I appreciate you guys taking that into consideration. We have our cleaning protocols are above what the county's required. And we have not had any problems. I think the problems that you've seen in town with a couple of the properties are very limited. And I had also heard, and I don't know if it's true, but came from the food service portion, the restaurants and bars of those businesses, as opposed to the hotel side. So I thanks for your time, and hopefully you guys make the right decision there.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, Council, next, we have, I'm not really sure I can read the name, but it's from Captain Cook Inn. Devin. Okay, so Devin from Captain Cook Inn.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this morning. I am the general manager at the Captain Cook Inn. My name is Douglas Thompson. I've worked there for about a year and a half now. Nice property, love the city, everything works well. Corona, when it came in, created quite a lot of financial difficulties. Some people in the community I still know that are in the industry as well as mine. We did wind up having to shut down for a couple of months. It made it extremely difficult on my housekeepers, on my maintenance staff, and on myself as well as the owners. But when we were able to reopen limited with the 24-hour hold, it was better than nothing. But it still created problems in having to just have people on half time at a minimum, and guests weren't wanting to come in. You know, if you had a reservation on Friday for one night, you lost your Saturday night revenue. And it just financially is very, very troublesome and a burden. Since we have been able to reopen, I have not lowered my cleaning standards for my housekeepers. We sanitize from the moment that we get on the property until we leave at the end of the day. We do have some public areas like a soda machine, and we're sanitizing even the buttons on that one 2 or 3 times a day in order to make certain that things are safe. As others have testified, the problems that we have seen are coming from more contact-based areas like restaurants where people are sitting and interacting, as opposed to just going to their room and relaxing or going out to the beach. Social distancing has been observed, and I have actually had my property above and beyond everything that they've had required from all levels, from city council to county council, clear on up to the governor. And, you know, since we've been taken off of the governor's watch list, since we were approved to go into phase 2 on September 2nd, I understand the county commissioners have extended that out to, I believe, the 30th of September, end of it. So it was a bit of a surprise to me that they were looking to put a 24-hour hold back on, and that will just absolutely decimate the industry as well. It's going to create a lot of havoc for guests whose reservations will have to be canceled in order to make that 24 hours happen. And I'm just very, very concerned about what's going to happen financially to the city when we throw our tourists under the bus, if you will. I appreciate again the fact of being able to speak with you, and hopefully you will make a decision that is based on not only the safety of the community, but also realizing that that safety is in part being able to make a living and look after ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, we have one more gentleman here, Greg. So I'll help you guys out.
Morning, City Council. My name is Gregory Stanrock. I'm a regional representative for the Oregon Restaurant Lodging Association, and I hope you're all doing well today, and I want to thank you for your hard work that you've put in during these difficult times. As you know, the lodging industry has experienced revenue declines and cash flow problems like we've never seen before. Although the past few months have shown an increase in business, many are still fighting for survival. The 24-hour hold restriction that was put in place earlier this year placed unnecessary strain on operators and their staff. Thankfully, in late June, Lincoln City lifted this mandate so operators could focus on their business and the safety of all involved. Putting these restrictions back in place would be a mistake, as it will not slow the spread of COVID-19. The governor herself has stated the three main contributing factors to the spread of the virus are food processing plants, social gatherings, and assisted living facilities. People will still come to this beautiful town. The difference will be they will have less accommodations and places to stay, therefore flooding the public areas. Additionally, Lincoln County is still the only county in the state to have this mandate. Both Newport and Yachats have amended this restriction. Neither the CDC or American Hotel and Lodging Association have recommended this practice in their guidelines. These operators continue to put in a tremendous amount of work to ensure the safety of their guests, employees, and the community. We ask that you continue to demonstrate faith in these operators and not put the 24-hour hold mandate back in place. The Orla team and I are available for assistance with any questions or needs you may have. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Mayor, that's everybody in council chambers.
All right. Mr. Chandler, do you have a summary of perhaps ones that have come in?
I do, Mr. Mayor, but I also have, I have a summary of 46 that you have received that were sent to me, that I got most of them to you last night. A few came overnight and I sent those. I've got a summary of those. However, in the last hour, I've received an additional 7. And those ones you haven't received, so I guess the question is, we will send those to be entered into the record, but do you want me to read those since you haven't received them in advance?
Well, I'm assuming you've scanned them, have you? Or is there, I guess my question would be, is there really anything different in those that isn't summarized in the 46?
No, it would be similar to the messages you've already heard.
Well, let's just make sure they're part of the record. And if you'd give us the summary of that input that you had gotten, would be helpful.
Okay. Now, first of all, so that's a total of 53 comments that we have received since the packet was published. And so these were the ones that weren't sent to you as part of the packet. One of those pertained to fireworks. And this gentleman said that if Lincoln City is going to sanction a commercial fireworks display at Chinook Winds Casino on a random Friday in August, then some attempt should be made to alert the residents in the vicinity. All of the remainder of the comments were about the COVID-19 24-hour rule that you're considering today. Summary of the comments are so what I've done is I've broken these out by categories and then given examples that seem to be the common thread that goes through all of these. The first type of comment was that the lodging industries are following or exceeding the CDC and OSHA guidelines for cleaning. These include items such as asking guests to strip their beds and leave their windows open, requiring a later check-in time, requiring social distancing, using duplicate sets of beddings and towels. All surfaces are cleaned between guests. Before arrival, guests are sent instructions on what is expected while on vacation, and there is no cleaning of occupied rooms. The second category of comments dealt with conflicting scientific information or just simply scientific information. Some of the comments were neither the CDC nor the American Hotel and Lodging Association have recommended the 24-hour hold rule. There is little risk of contracting COVID-19 from surface exposure. Lincoln County is off the governor's watch list. The state has approved the county going into phase 2. The numbers are down. No numbers suggesting our guests are at risk. Studies show that airborne version of the virus remains in the air for 3 hours. The transmission of the virus is most likely caused by contact with someone who has the virus. The 24-hour hold rule won't prevent this. Medical facilities, restaurants, fitness centers, stores, etc. do not require a 24-hour hold rule. And why is the lodging industry being singled out? The next category of discussion was in the area of economic impact. And the comments associated with this were, this will result in a loss of income. The business has already lost substantial revenue during the time the lodging industry was closed. This would require canceling many reservations, and many reservations have been made weeks in advance. The economic loss to businesses will result in laying off employees, and the 24-hour rule will not prevent people from coming to the coast. The next category of comments are under hotels are taking safety precautions with their employees, including taking temperatures, using N95 masks, and wearing gloves. Other comments were the season is coming to an end. This is a last-minute meeting. Social media is flooded with our locals heading out to the valley to shop and travel, and the 24-hour rule does nothing to affect that. That's a summary of the comments, and I'll make sure that all of these are entered into the record.
Okay. So, Ron, I guess I'm a little bit surprised because the earlier comments that came in the packet all seem to be pretty heavy from locals, citizens, and more on the health concern. And yet, now these other 52, 53 seem to be from the industry at large. Is that how you're seeing it?
Yes, as a matter of fact, all of the comments were from representatives of the lodging industry. The ones that are in the packet were not specific public comments to this meeting, but were more for your information of comments we have received since about mid-June.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, thank you. I got one in, and hopefully it's came, but it has a similar kind of thing. This was actually from Lee Judson from Motel 6. I'd heard some things this morning that people were being blocked to sending comments to the Lincoln City public comment thing. But
I have received that one, Mayor. It came in, actually, he sent it twice. It came in at 8:51 and 8:55 a.m., but it's not one that you have received. It's one of those later group.
Good. Well, we'll just make sure it's part of the record. All right. So, that's the public comment. We'd move then to our agenda items, which is the request to consideration of the 24-hour rule on lodging and lodging business. So I'm going to make a wild guess and suggest that this is probably Deanna Hitton's suggestion or concern. Is
Mr. Mayor, there are actually 3 counselors who had contacted me about holding a special meeting or putting it on for the next agenda. And it was based upon those 3 emails that we put it onto this one and contacted the other counselors to see if they were okay with putting it on for a special meeting.
right. Well, I'm looking for someone to lead the charge then as far as the discussion. So I don't know who is interested in.
I'll do that.
Okay.
I think there's been a lot of concern, especially since we have our own public health official who's been talking to the Planning Commission and to the county commissioners. And a lot of information has surfaced since information has come out. The one comment somebody made about viruses being on surfaces for 3 hours is now being proved that it's longer than that, it's 24 hours. And there's been some conflict because right at the top of the CDC, we have conflicting information coming out and rearranging of the people who are experts to give us information, and even coming down into our state and county level where we have lack of equipment and materials coming from the CDC, let alone current information and facts. So I do understand that because of the meeting from the county commissioners, there's a concern from our own Rebecca that it's better to be safe than sorry. Even though the numbers are down, they aren't back where we can get into stage 2, and that's been postponed until September 29th. We can't be overly cautious, and I just think it was a good idea to sit down and take a look at this once again. We've had an influx of people coming and going in our county, and true, they're not counted here. When they do have the virus, they go back to the state and they're counted where they're from. We do have reports of a lot of staff, housekeeping staff, that have left because of concerns about cleaning preparations, and not everybody does all the things that have been so eloquently explained to us. Some of us who live in these areas have observed techniques that have not been followed. So it just seems like a timely topic to take a look at this. Either maybe not right now, but look at a future date to coincide with the stage 2 reexamination. But I think it's something that we need to look at to protect our citizens. Our goal is to get kids back in school, and I think it's important to look at all aspects of what we can cut back on possibilities of spreading this virus. And the lodging industry is one of those places, not knowing for sure the contaminated workers come from the restaurant area or the hotel area, but some of those things are kept private. Therefore, I think as responsible council members, it doesn't behoove us to discuss this topic at this time.
Okay. Deanna.
I would just like to add that the county recently started breaking down some of their data into categories, and they did this by industry. This is just recently, as of August 18th, and they have it broken down by industry. Restaurant and food service is one, hospitality is another, agricultural food processing another, retail, and then they've since dropped retail, but long-term care and then other. And this is where they track the positive cases of COVID, and we're trying to, I've asked Ron, city manager, and our emergency coordinator to check into some of these numbers, because there's some confusion about when we heard about the outbreaks at Surf Tides and at the Inn at Spanish Head. We weren't given information if that was their restaurant and the staff associated with that, or if the outbreaks and staff were associated with their lodging. And so without knowing that, it's hard to even talk about the 24-hour rule. So Mr. Chandler's been doing some research about that. But just to give you the numbers, I'll just look at Lincoln City. The report before last in food service were 10 in an outbreak. And a week later, which was the 26th, just a couple of days ago, a few days ago, there were 20. So they've 100% grown in their case numbers, or doubled them from 10 to 20. So that alerted me to ask Mr. Chandler for some help. And then in the hospitality, which there was some assumption, even in watching the Director Austin's presentation to the county commissioners, and she's the health director, that it was potentially coming from the tourist industry. And so there was a bit of an assumption towards the hospitality end of it. And on this chart, in Lincoln City, as of August 18th, there were 9 positive cases that they had been tracking. And then on August 26th, there were 10. So they just had a growth of 1 over a week's time. And that to me gave me a little bit of pause about this 24-hour rule. And I thought we needed to do more research. We needed better data. And the county needs to help us with this, because Director Austin had been requesting of the county commissioners and of Lincoln City, because she said, especially concerned about Lincoln City because the virus is moving north, in her opinion, and Lincoln City's numbers are growing and Newport's are decreasing. So her focus is turning towards us. And so the request was made of the county commissioner chair to ask Lincoln City if we would take another look at this 24-hour hold. But since then, I've done a little deeper diving into these numbers, and so that's one piece of it. And another piece of it is they also started at the same meeting to look at the demographics a little bit about the ethnicity. And I find this startling and something that we really need to put on the forefront of our thinking about this virus. The not Hispanic or not Latinx is 30% of the cases. Unknown is 18% of the cases. And the Hispanic or Latinx is 52% of the cases. So I think that's where our hard work needs to be directed, at our residents who fit that ethnicity category. And so I think we're looking at the right thing when we're looking at the tourist industry, not specifically at the tourists themselves. However, we don't know. But this is after the contact tracing has been done. And the initial contact with the person who has positive COVID test is 2 to 3 hours. It's very intense, and they do a thorough job at the county. And the follow-ups, they do a follow-up once every day with all of the people on their contact list, which is a tremendous list, because if you consider how many people come in contact with a person out there working every day, the number is pretty big. And so they go through all of that, and they're finding if the contacts are at home, like in their living situation, then that's one thing. But if they can isolate it to to one of these other industries like restaurant, hospitality, agriculture, long-term care, then they do that. So they're pretty thorough in their sorting. They started out not being as thorough, but they are now because the county commissioners have been asking for more detailed breakdowns. So I think if Ron has found any more information out about the numbers and those two outbreaks that specifically may have been behind the question in the first place, that would be very helpful.
Ron?
Yeah, so far, Mr. Mayor, I've been able to find out a little bit of information about the outbreak at Inn at Spanish Head. We have been trying to be in contact with the health department about surf tides, but unfortunately I don't have the same information. It's not a lot of information, but this is what we have learned. The outbreak caused Fathom's restaurant to be closed. 5 cases out of the 97 employees. As of the OHA weekly report on August 26, 2020, they showed another case for a total of 6 cases. The restaurant was closed on August 24th, 2020 to conduct operational cleaning and to allow staff time to quarantine and to submit to additional testing as warranted. Due to privacy issues, it was not disclosed if the staff that tested positive were all assigned to the restaurant or which part of the restaurant. Due to privacy issues, we cannot confirm if the staff had COVID-19 from some other source or they acquired COVID-19 from the source at the hotel. And as I said, unfortunately, we've not been able to get any of the same kind of information from the on the surf tides. I might point out that it is very difficult to get information because most of it is protected to protect people's privacy.
Right, and I think the question though goes back to this 24-hour hold request and whether or not we're looking at the appropriate industry for any assistance or encouragement that the city can provide to bring our numbers down, which is the goal. And so I think I have to say that I think we probably should watch this carefully for the next little bit, maybe as Councilor Casper has suggested, maybe with that phase 2 deadline of September 29th, and maybe revisit it then to see how the numbers are. But keep a close eye on the industry that's associated with these positive cases. And then I think another question for us would be, because it appears to be more restaurant and food services related at this time, what is it that we can do when we don't have the authority over the restaurants and whether they're open or closed or whatever? What types of encouragement could we provide to them that, we're watching, we're keeping track of this impacts our residents and we care about them. And we want people to be safe. We want our numbers to go down.
Let me add a little more information then to this, because I too have been talking to Rebecca Austin. And so I appreciate the information everybody's sharing. One piece that has come to light is in the contact tracing. And I'm led to believe by Rebecca that they have found in the county that when they were tracing the Newport outbreaks, that on average, the contacts were 6 individuals for every positive. So in essence, that kind of gave who the positive was in contact with. In Lincoln City, that number was 15. So what that means is that for some reason, our folks who are positive do a lot more socializing out. And then, add that to where outbreaks are occurring, it really doesn't surprise me. I don't think it's workplace is what I'm saying. I think it's the social dinners after the work session, workers socializing, the living conditions, where they, double up or bunk. So I think there's a lot more to this story. So I'm encouraging us not to quickly think that it's a workplace, that it's our own social habits that we need to encourage our citizens to retract from being so sociable, I guess it would be my suggestion. And Councilor Hinton, I don't know how we control that or do that. We've got executive orders now with 10 and no more than 10 and face masks and everything else. I think it's that public service announcements, trying to remind everybody that they need to be cognizant of how this stuff spreads and quit socializing so much.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I also think because we do have the categories of where these cases are tracked to the industry, I think we could, though, provide extra encouragement through perhaps a letter from council, letter from Ron to all of the food service, saying that the numbers are up in that category. So please, as you're doing your job, as you're going home, as you're gathering afterwards, whatever, I think that is a good place to provide the message, and maybe also in Spanish, because heck, they're over half of the positive cases, and they're only 10% of our population. So we've got to do something here. I mean, I think it is, the messages are getting out there. We're certainly seeing masks on people walking up and down the street even. So, the message is getting out there, and that's really great. I just think it would be helpful if we provided that extra level of encouragement and push even through the businesses, because they can talk with their employees and let them know that the city's concerned about those numbers going up in that particular industry, and whether they're getting it from their coworker or from their friend down the street that they hang out with afterwards. I mean, the message is the important part.
Yep. Okay. Councilor Casper?
Yeah, I just want to add something else here that I discovered, excuse me, in talking with public health. I was wondering about the term recovered. So I learned that prior to April 15th, the Oregon health authorities considered recovered if you were symptom-free or after 3 days. But now they're learning that the new symptoms stay for a long period of time, even weeks or months. So now OHA considers a confirmed case as alive after 60 days from the first day it was tested. So now it's 60 days to be recovered. So currently we have 31 recovered cases in Lincoln County and 463 cases and 446 positive tested. So our new definition of recovered will be monitored a little longer, and maybe should be a concern for people than it used to be.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Chandler?
Yes, sir.
You look like you had comment, or?
No, I'm just intently listening.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else want to weigh in with thoughts, comments? Mr. Parson?
Yeah, I just want to say there's a voice that we haven't heard from, and that's the housekeepers and whatnot. So this past weekend I went and talked to several, and I found pretty much most of them are more worried about their economic situation than the virus, and don't wish to lose hours or work. I talked to about 15 or 20 people. Some work in some work in hotels, some work VRDs, some were independent, and some work for big companies. And it seemed across the board, except for one person was still worried about the virus. Everybody else seemed like they were comfortable, felt like they had what they needed, and were doing what they could. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you for adding that. Anyone else? All right. Well, then I'm assuming good information, and you know, we need. I would agree. Every effort needs to be made to help educate our workforce and citizens, and you do whatever we can there. But what I'm hearing is there's no action on a 24-hour recommendation at this time.
Yeah, I think if we can just put it on the calendar for around September 29th so we can revisit it to see how it goes.
Don't we have a meeting on the 24th?
Yes, I think we do.
Well, that would be probably a good time.
Yeah, and I'd also like to ask what council thinks about sending a letter specifically to the restaurant and food service. They have, you know, those numbers are pretty, I mean, when they double in 1 week, I think we should be concerned and let them know that we're concerned about the numbers. And is there anything that they need help with from the city? I mean, I don't know what they would need, maybe just encouragement to, you know, watch their social gathering after work. But another letter to push to ask the managers and the owners of the businesses to meet with their staff and provide this information that, you know, the numbers have doubled in 1 week. That's just not a good idea.
Hey, Tony, is the gentleman from the lodging industry still in the chamber?
Yes.
I wonder if council, if we brought him back up, and you know, why should the trade association take a handle on this, and let's put him on the spot.
All right, I'll go ahead and set up on the laptop.
Thank you.
Everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm getting a little feedback.
Is there a?
I'm getting some weird feedback. Okay.
Is there a video there, or?
Let me see. Oh.
There you are. All right. Thanks for coming back up.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you've heard the discussion we've had, some of the numbers thrown out. You know, so part of your industry, I assume, you know, since restaurants are in your title. So is there something you as a trade association can do to assist us in better informing your restaurants and their workforces and help curb some of these numbers?
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head. Communication is the best tool that we have right now. And, you know, from my perspective, what I was planning on doing after this meeting is just getting the letter out to folks in Lincoln City area, making sure that they're aware of the conversation that was had today. I think that's a lot of the key things that we can be doing. So I will definitely, from my perspective, once we get done with this meeting, I'm going to reach out to all of our database within Lincoln City and let them know that there are discussions. We all need to make sure that we're taking those extra steps and communicating with our employees and our staff to make sure that we're all continuing to take this seriously. From my personal experience being out and about as a regional rep from the hotel and restaurant side, I've seen a tremendous amount of work put in and amount of effort that they put in. And I think we need to continue to push that message, both as an association and as a community. So, you know, we could absolutely send an email out and get that done and make sure that we're communicating, saying, hey, the city council is still concerned, the community is still concerned. Let's make sure we're doing our part to protect everyone, including our employees, our staff, the customers, and of course the community.
Well, and I think, as strong a words as you can provide would make a lot of sense, because hopefully you've heard from this council that, we're concerned about the overall economics and health and safety of this community. And, if we have to, clearly, I guess that's one of the tools of doing something that we'd just as soon not have to do, as, adversely affecting the restaurant or lodging industry or any other business. So I would hope your trade association, and perhaps not knowing how many members you have in Lincoln City, that you would perhaps jointly work with the chamber so that, everybody's touched. And somehow, I'm serious about making it real strong, that it's not just the workplace, but it's the social behavior after the workday too that's bleeding and adversely affecting your industry. So I would do whatever you can, because we're going to do it as well. But you certainly have been an advocate for them, as you should be. So, all right, Councilor Hinton, you have comment?
I just have a request of Greg. Would you mind emailing us or CCing us or somehow getting your letter to us too, so we know what you have done, so we can support what you are sending out? Because we all individually, as council members, get a lot of contact with the community, and and this is concerning. And if you could do that, that'd be real helpful. Then we could assess what we need to do in addition to what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important that we all work together during this situation. I don't think it's a city council problem or an Orla problem. It's a community needs to get together. We all need to work together. We need to work together with the chambers, with our DMOs, with all of our operators, and of course the city council. So anything we can do to support the effort to keep Lincoln County continuing to have good numbers and to be safe, that's what we'll do. And yeah, I have no problem keeping everyone in the loop on what we're working on as far as when we send out a letter and let you know where we're at. We want to support and we want to work together, and that's the best way to get through this whole situation.
And we want to get our kids back to school physically, so that would be helpful. All right, thanks, Greg. Thanks.
All right,
thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so shall we move on to the next topic? And Abby, there you are. Oh, your mobile office, I see.
I am today. The roofers are stripping my roof, and it's very loud in my home office, so I'm in my home office vehicle instead.
Good for you.
But it works, and so I'm ready to go if you are ready to.
So I think a recap of this is we're looking at performance evaluation forms for our three employees of the city council, and that would be the city manager, city attorney, and the municipal judge. You want to help us maybe set the stage, Abby?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Mayor. The council noted some desire to make a change to the city manager's evaluation process. And as a matter of protocol, we do need to adopt a process for each of the council employees' evaluations. And we're a little bit past the time that we usually would do them. At our last meeting, we talked about changing the timeline for the evaluations to coincide with the fiscal year. That would help facilitate ease of information, especially with having just completed a budget year or the budget cycle, adopting a new budget. All of the information about city happenings is more readily available for the council, and you would have been briefed on things for the few months leading up to that time. The judge's evaluation, his contract also aligns with the fiscal year, and the city attorney was positive in that idea to change that as well. So we've compiled a lot of information for you. There are a couple of speed bumps, I suppose I could say. The judge was not able to attend today. He was unavailable. So I know we haven't proposed any changes to his process. He is willing to speak to the council, if, and give you some feedback and input if you want to meet with him on a non-quorum basis, and then decide exactly what you want to do with his. That would need to kind of happen not at this particular meeting. And then the city attorney process, I've been receiving more information. Mr. Apicello's initial thoughts were, let's use this version that we have now and then build a new one with the criteria you want to evaluate him on for the next cycle. So that's something for the council to consider. And I have received several models from him. I really need to look at those more in depth and go over that with what his job is, what his duties are and how that all fits together and what would work well for everybody. And then I have also sent information on all of the city manager evaluations we've used for the last 3 years, kind of pulled those together, incorporated council comments I have to date, and would like to go over those with you and decide, have your input and possibly a decision. You don't have to decide today, but because it did turn into a special meeting, you do have that option. So that's kind of where we are, and if you're okay with that, I would ask that we, put the judge's evaluation information on hold if you want his feedback, and then consider what to do with the city attorney's evaluation, and he may have some more comments to add to mine, and then go over in detail what we've gotten together for the city managers.
Okay. Let's deal with the judges first. Is that acceptable that maybe what we do is just find a date and do, I guess, an executive session with the judge to just sit down with him and talk through? Councilor Casper.
Mr. Mayor, can we take a big long picture look at this, because maybe projecting out a timeline for completion might be a logical suggestion. So there's elections coming up and there's a lot of things happening. Suppose we put it out until December as our goal to have everybody evaluated, maybe the first meeting in December, and then therefore we know how much time we have to spend. Would that be helpful to look at? I mean, when are we going to complete this is what I'm asking. So if we talk about the judge, is there a timeline we want to get it done by, or can we discuss having maybe all of these done by the first meeting in December?
Abby, you have a thought there?
I do. Thank you, Mayor and Councilor Casper. In general, there's a timeline proposed. It's in conjunction with the city managers. But in general, with all the information compilation, I would say it takes about 2 months, especially trying to tuck it in with different council meetings and executive sessions. So December would be feasible, I think, at this point, if we're still kind of trying to work details out on the judges. We could get the others done a little sooner if we're adopting a process.
I guess I'm a little bit confused because I would think we could do, if it's the performance review that is concerning, we could do that in relatively short order, just by setting dates and moving ahead with existing forms and process. So, that could be done in September in reality. But what I thought was that there was a concern among enough counselors that the form needed to be regenerated, revitalized, something to provide a different type of review. So I guess that's my confusion now is, we could set a date by the end of the month. Let's get the 3 performances done. Just do it. And with the forms we've got. But if we want to work on changing forms, then, I think that's down the road. And I don't know what the most urgent piece is.
Well, I'm a little bit confused. So aren't we supposed to, Abby, first adopt a process, right? Is that correct? And do the forms fall into that process? Is that what then we adopt? Or
yes, we do need a process. It was my understanding we wanted to change up the city manager process. The other 2, because they are employees of the council, came into the mix and may not need changes right now.
Okay.
Well, hold on. So what you're saying is for the last 50 years of Lincoln City, we do not have a process in place that we've been using. So is there, help me to answer Councilman Casper's concern, is there not a process in place now to do performance reviews?
There is a form for each employee.
No, how about a process?
There's not a specific process adopted that I know of. Mr. Chandler might have something else to say.
Okay.
Well, I believe for the city attorney, I think the process was I do a self-evaluation, counselors take the form, prepare their comments, then you guys get together and come up with one evaluation. And that was something we talked about in 2013, I believe. Maybe 2014, but that's been the process. And I believe, Mayor, I think that you and I worked on the form, which eventually got adopted as the form for the review. And I'm perfectly okay with using that form and just getting the evaluation done. Again, it's for the period of February to February. I think the adjustment to do it mid-year, fiscal year is fine, because we've had the problem of new counselors coming on and then not having only a month or 2 to figure out how to do an evaluation of someone that they don't know. So I'm perfectly fine with that, and I'm perfectly fine with sticking with the form we have, because frankly, I've been pretty unimpressed with the examples that the International Municipal Lawyers Association has sent me. So that's where I am.
Mr. Chandler.
So very similar to what Richard was talking about, the process has been that the council, in this case, has been in the spring, or in the past few years, would review, conduct their evaluation in a closed session. I have not provided self-evaluations. Parts of it as Richard has done, and then they would accept the evaluation in the city council meeting, and then the mayor would review it with me. The big question that seemed to come, and it's almost been annually now, is which evaluation form do you want to use? And so that's what Abby has really been working on, is which is the evaluation form that you would like to use. And then this year, in the discussions we've had, the suggestion has been to, like Richard said, to put it after the budget has been adopted. And I quite frankly like that opportunity, because so much of what I do is tied to the budget. And also for the reason that you have new counselors that come on and are evaluating with very little time to work with me. So I like that change in it. I don't have a strong preference on the form that you use. Generally, I'm not a big fan of the numbering system. I'm more of a fan of the, here are the tasks that we want you to do, and at the end of the year, we evaluate whether or not you got those tasks done. But I'm not opposed to the ones that Abby has put forth for you today.
So what I hear is we do have a process. So I'm just trying to help Councilor Casper and come back to what we're really working on and what we want to change. So we do have a process. We could do with that process, we could take care of performance reviews in a month, in the month of September, if we so desired and got on it, using existing forms. Now, if that's not what we want to do, if somebody's saying we need to come into a new age or a new form or even a new process, then I hear you. But let's distinguish that that's not holding up what we could do. We could do performances immediately.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
I just want to make sure we all agree. I don't want to say that we could do that.
We could, but I thought we had agreed before, and why we're even talking about it now is that we were going to look at all of these different, our three people and the process and how it works. We don't have a generic list of questions to talk with the department heads about. Some counselors may do it, some not. We don't have a real clear process. And so I, for one, would like that. And I understand your question. Can we use what we had before just to get this done so we can check off that box? I really like, and I guess I also want to respond to Mr. Chandler. And I know he doesn't like the numbering system, and he and I disagree wholeheartedly about this. You can check a box and say, yeah, I did that task. But how well did you do it? Did you do it to council's expectations? So the numbering system does give it some weight, and I'm going to hold out for the numbers because I think checking a box isn't what we're supposed to be doing with evaluations.
All right, well, but let me go back again, because we're talking around issues here. Again, Councilor Hinton, you're also suggesting a much bigger, longer process. That means coming up and a task for somebody with Abby, redoing a process, redoing forms, and that's fine. But what I also hear, I thought I was hearing, so it's a question from both the employees and from some of the counselors, that we need to get a performance evaluation off the books, get them satisfied with, and let somebody else start looking at a new process.
Actually, we've already been doing that, Mr. Anderson. I mean, that's what Abby's been working on, and she has asked for council input on different forms and all of this, and that's what at least some of us have been involved in prior to this meeting.
I thought we were looking at a new format for the city manager specifically to kind of freshen it up and fall in line with what's being done to the other two. I thought we were here to look at some of the suggestions for the city manager evaluation specifically. I'm fine with the judge using the form that he did, and also the city attorney, and look at his, if there needs to be alterations next year, and focus, currently on the city manager form.
Well, I'm hearing different things and through this. We're getting it down to what the real issue. It sounds like the only one we're on a dance with right now is city managers, and we've established there's a process, and it sounds like it's just a new form for the city manager. Abby, is that where you are, or?
It is, yes, and the other employees came into play because they are all council employees. So And I was told that we needed to say, this is the process, let's go forth. So the form after input is pretty close, I think, to what, with all the comments that I've received. So it is ready to review if you want to make that change. And then I can also get things rolling for the other two to start evaluations if you're ready. We could do, get the city attorney and judges done in September if you prefer.
Okay. Mr. Appicello?
Just one thing. If we're going to try to do it in September, I'm going to ask you to maybe just bump it to October 12th for me, because we have a special meeting with a land use appeal and then an annexation development agreement at the end of the month. And so I've got a lot on my plate for this month. So if you want to maybe schedule mine for October 12th, that would be helpful. The one concern I have is that this is supposed to be, I'll use it as an example. We had a former elected official who went right to the personnel director once and started talking about who they ought to hire for a specific job opening. And it was like, no, stop. Individual counselors have no authority about personnel, certainly not about anybody other than the three people we're talking about. This process needs to result in the council, the governing body's evaluation of these three employees, not individual counselor evaluations. So that's on you guys to, when you go in that executive session room and you have your comments, you guys have to fight it out over what gets into the evaluation. So it's not just 7 evaluations, but it has to become 1 evaluation. So that's my only concern, is that holds through for all the 3 members we're talking about.
Right. Agreed. And that's the difficult part, as always.
Well, and I'm happy to help facilitate getting that collective final product, and that's, part of the process there.
Okay.
So
Abby,
that may be why it will take a little longer than we always hope.
So Abby, do you have a form currently that has been roughed up, worked out, drafted?
I do. Let me see if I can share my screen. Could I get the ability to do that, please? And then I can, thank you. Let's see. This one. Okay. So, in terms of talking about a process, that's kind of outlined in the first 2 pages here. I did email this version last night. The initial set that was sent in the packet had the 3 years pulled together, and then this incorporates the comments that I've received from various council members. But the instructions and timeline sheets would talk about, encouraging regular communication, just kind of how you would do the performance evaluation, the items that could be included for, to help make the review with the fiscal year council goals and priorities, the department head interview information. We have a sheet of questions that are up for you to decide if you would like to open those up for you to have those conversations with department heads in your information seeking. And the goals set for the city manager from the prior review, a status update of the goals. I highlighted that one because if we switch to the fiscal year, most of that will have been taken care of with the budget message, the things leading up to this time. And you could utilize that instead of a self-evaluation. Or you could use a self-evaluation that is exactly the same as whatever form you adopt. or you could have a simplified form, and I have one of those attached to from a different city you can look at in just a moment. Let's see, and then pulling together the city charter objectives. They are built into each section of the evaluation form already. The most recent form had that. The evaluation was based only on the charter's objectives, or mostly, I shouldn't say only. And performance expectations set forth in the employment contract. So a copy of the contract, which says, what the council expects. So all of those things would definitely be packaged up and given to the council. The form we're going to look at has a 4-number scale. I know that Councilor Hinton had noted 5 numbers previously. It can be difficult to get somewhere in between meeting and exceeding requirements. So you would really have to define how exceeding, would compare to like superior performance if you wanted to add a number 5. So that's something to think about. And then the annual timeline. So it's just put it with the budget. This is why. Followed with a proposed timeline each year. If you want to shorten that down to a month, I'm sure that we could. I just think it's a lot of information to read through and then to get in touch with department heads if that's going to be part of the process, and then pull it all together. 2 months, I think, is maybe 1.5 months would be a good thing to shoot for each year, especially if we do all 3 of them in tandem. Okay. So let's see. I summarized what each of the 3 evaluations you had used from 2017 through 2019 included. 2017 was a longer form. 2018 was much shorter with 6 categories, down to 2019 with 4 categories all related to the charter. And largely goal-oriented and comment-oriented. So we went from a numbered system to comment. And it sounded like we wanted to get a good mix of that put back together. So in an effort to do that, those 3 were pulled together. And then I think it came out to 10 questions instead of 4, pulling apart the sections that said this category can also include. It was in a really long paragraph style, pulling those apart so you can think about it a little bit more compartmentally, and then make your comments for each section. So assisting the council, related duties from the city charter, that they attend all council meetings unless excused, keep the council advised of the affairs and needs of the city, see that provisions of all ordinances are administered to the satisfaction of the council. So then there are, I believe, 4 or 5 questions related to council relations and communication, organization and progress reporting. And let me know if I'm going too fast. I want to just kind of summarize it, and we can go back in detail and change things if you want to kind of work on it now too. Implementation and follow through, council communication related to risk management. And okay, so that one was pulled apart into 4 questions. And all those are mostly communication based and how the city manager would relate to the council. Anything in blue is new to the form and comes from comments from council members, from looking at other city forms or past experience. And then, so the second section is about policy advice and leadership on key issues related to the charter. That is that see all terms of franchises, lease, contract, permits, and privileges granted by the city are fulfilled. That was a large paragraph. I pulled it into 2 sections, one on policy advice and one on administrative leadership ability. And then the next section is on leadership of the administrative team. Related to the charter, that's appoint, discipline, and remove appointed personnel, except appointees of the mayor or council. Organize and reorganize the departmental structure of city government, supervise and control the manager's appointees in their service to the city. So that covers effective leadership, staff management and support. And then it moves into fiscal management. So this is that fourth, the fourth one. The fourth section that was pulled from the very last evaluation. So related to the city charter, preparing and transmitting to the council an annual city budget, supervising city contracts, all purchasing, operation of all city-owned utilities and property. So that was pulled apart into two pieces there, which was budget preparation and budget monitoring and communication. I did see there may be a need to add a little bit of language there, maybe under budget monitoring and communication about working with staff and those things. A lot of those things would fall departmentally. So that was just something I noticed in the last few days. So that was pulling apart the questions, giving more room for comments, adding numbers, and then the last page has goals accomplished since last review, area for improvement, and goals for next review. On the form, these sections are expandable fields, so as you type, the form will get longer. It'll just be fillable there. So that's the draft, incorporating everything, all of the comments I've gleaned from emails. And then this is the form of a self-eval that is very basic, came from a different city. It's a thought. You may or may not want to implement a self-evaluation if we're getting all of the budget information and progress report, that kind of thing. So we've got like 5 questions, well, 4 questions and a space for comments for the city manager to, summarize his work. And then this was from the ICMA manual. It just is a sheet of successful evaluation tips. So that's the International City Managers Association. That could be included with all of our information packet to say, consider these things when you're performing the evaluation. So that is what we've put together so far. And I'm going to scroll back up and try not to make you dizzy here. But I'll get back to the top of this one. And I'm happy to answer questions and change something. What would you like?
Any thoughts?
I appreciate the comprehensiveness of it. I'd like to let us look at it, for a while, at least till next meeting. I think it injects a lot of substance that we can have for discussion. I appreciate it.
Okay. Councilor Hinton.
I would just like to add somewhere, and Abby, maybe you can help figure out where this is, but the communication piece of it relates to council and communication, and I couldn't find the communication with the community, which is of utmost importance to the city, and how things are communicated and all that kind of thing.
I did see that in the evaluation from 2017. I could pull that language in from that evaluation and add it to the assisting the council section if you would like that.
Yeah, I would, because that's such a big deal. That's so much of what Ron has been doing, and it's so important. And I would just add the other bit of it is communication risk management, which is just kind of a filter before things are sent out. Is this, will this be clear to the community? Will it raise other issues because of how the language is worded or whatever? Just as a double check. You know, is there enough definition? Are people going to understand what we're trying to do as a city? That kind of thing.
Okay. We can modify that and make that more clear.
So I guess the recommendation then is to, Abby, you've sent this out or will send this out to council, and we would, and to Ron, and then we'd have a chance to review it and give comments back to you. Is that what I'm hearing?
It sounds like it. Need a little time to digest, and I can add those two things and resend it. And then if we add it to the next regular council meeting for comments or, you know, adoption with modifications, that would be great.
Also, Mayor Anderson?
Yep, go ahead, Councilor.
If we, like Ron suggested, we talk with the department heads, which I really appreciate because so many positive comments come from those discussions, Ron. If we all had maybe a set of questions so we could ask kind of like the same area topic questions. I think we worked on some of those, Abby.
Yeah, I have that. Let me pull it up here. Sorry, I didn't have that in the same package. Okay, I'm gonna stop my share for a moment and pull up my folder. Okay, so for that, yes, there were, and sorry about all the track changes here. Let me do the no markup there. Now it's easily read. Okay, so these questions were pulled from, I believe, the city of Florence. They had quite a few questions that they talked to their leadership team about. So there are several that would give you a lot of talking points to go over with department heads and find out what you need to know. So supervision and leadership section, then the individual characteristics, also citizen relations here, and one more section, professional skills and status, and then a comment section. So I did send this one out this morning. I missed getting it into the packet, but that could definitely be incorporated. I know Mr. Chandler was definitely fine, like, yes, please talk to department heads if that's what helps you get the information you need. So.
Okay.
And maybe Ron, look it over and see if you find it's appropriate and for you too.
All right. So I think that's would be helpful to have a chance to review this stuff and give feedback back through Abby for all of us. But any other questions on thoughts on the city manager process?
I have a question.
Sure.
So this whole eval process, just to clarify, has no bearing on whether or not the employee of which we oversee gets or does not get a raise, correct?
It has nothing to do with compensation.
So the purpose of the eval is for what?
To evaluate his performance or anybody's performance during the year.
With no impact on their on their status that way.
Well, yeah, if it's not meeting the needs and direction of council, then you start building a case because he's on a contract. You can eliminate the contract.
All right. All right.
I mean, that would end. The more constructive process is, here's what we, thought you were going to do and you haven't. And, in order to continue on, we need to find a way to get there. So,
right. So with whatever process we choose, will there be ways in which, let's say it's out of 5, if it's 2.2 or lower, we're going to talk about, not renewing their contract, or will there be provisions of, it needs to be something. So without there being a baseline of expectation built into it, how are we to use that,
Well, clearly, for me anyway, it's item by item, where do I think you're doing? And that offers an opportunity to talk about that specific area. Now, if the whole thing comes down to, non-performance at all, then you're talking about a continuation of employment.
Right.
But, there's enough things in here that not everybody is perfect, and we should all recognize that. And if maybe it's communication, and a specific type of communication needs some uplifting or different style, that's where I would hope that would come out during the review and discuss it with, in this case, Ron.
And there are, I would add, places you could say, areas that need improvement, you can make those comments. And then when we pull the collective final draft, final version together, if there are areas that need improvement, offer suggestions how to make those improvements. If you're basing it on numbers and you want to, define when, performance improvement is required, as far as, something to check in on, we can do that. But for the most part, if you are marking 2s that needs improvement, you would offer those suggestions.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? So that's helpful, Abby. Thank you. And if you'd get that out to us, I guess taking care of the other 2 employees, if we could somehow, I think, set up a meeting with the municipal judge and then get the attorney's existing process in the queue.
Okay. So would the 12th work for everybody? Mr. Appicello had noted October 12th. And Richard, did you mean that as the final date for the council to do executive session compilation, or to go over it with you?
That's the date I figured the council would meet and talk about my self-evaluation and hash it out. They could meet with me after that.
Okay. Does that work for you, Mayor and Council, to set Mr. Appicello's for October 12th?
So could you clarify what Mr. Appicello just said? Am I to believe that we would, between now and October 12th, the city council would be meeting and coming up with one evaluation?
No, on October 12th, you would meet and come up with one evaluation.
So why are we dictated by your schedule as to when we meet?
Just because I do a self-evaluation to kick it off.
Okay, so what you're really saying is you can't get the self-evaluation to us until well before October or October 12th?
Well, I kind of.
That's okay. That's what I want to make sure. So, so that means that would be this, in essence, the start of city council getting together, and it would be towards the end of October probably that we'd be sitting down with you.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I wanted to make clear. Okay. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I just have a question. Maybe Abby can help with this. Because we really don't have much interaction at all with the judge, is there, and I have not been going into the council chambers, trying to avoid any extra trips. Is there another way that you can suggest that we talk with the judge before we do the evaluation or as we're doing it?
Yes, Councilor Hinton, he did offer to meet with council in a non-quorum format. So if you wanted to get together with him 2 at a time with, on Zoom, if you want to do it that way, or a conference call, or if you want to do an in-person socially distanced meeting, maybe find out which day he's doing court if you do want to observe. We are holding court the 2 Tuesdays a month, and it is socially distanced and mask required, all of that. So he did offer, we just need to make sure it aligns with his schedule, so I can get you his contact information if you want to individually talk to him.
Okay, that'd be very helpful. Thank you.
All right. Is there anything else for the good of the order?
Got people in here that still would like to make a comment.
Okay. Is that new people? Abby, could you take your
So we have one more comment.
slide down?
Mayor?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
I thank you. I would like to take a second opportunity because of something that I did hear during the meeting so far. Since we are discussing statistics of the virus going up and being extended for, from 3 hours to 24, and we can go up to 60 days now for whatever. We're talking a lot of, excuse me, we're talking a lot of numbers that really don't have a lot of verification through the CDC or the OHA. And as has been noted by members of the council as well, much of this is inconclusive. From what I've been able to study and research, not being a super tech friendly individual, I have noticed that when COVID started, there was an upswing in cases, there was an upswing in hospitalizations, and there was an upswing in death rate. The idea was get things contained with face masks, face shields, social distancing, additional sanitization procedures, all of which have been done, at least on our property. And the idea was to flatten the curve. That happened back in May. That the rates have come down. And then, of course, we want more testing. Common sense to me says that more testing is going to indicate more cases. But what I am seeing with my limited knowledge is the case rates are going up, but there is no comparable hospitalization or death rate to follow. And I'm not going to say that, worldwide that may not be the case, but since we're talking Lincoln City, I think it might be an idea to just check with surgeons, the doctors, the hospitals themselves, to see whether or not they've been inundated with cases and overwhelmed or anything else in regards to this pandemic, epidemic, case-demic, before we make any decisions. I did note that, or at least what I'm hearing is that you're going to table the issue on the 24 hours until a later date, which, if my understanding is correct, I'm certain we'll see each other again. But I just wanted to make certain that all the numbers that are out there, in effect with CDC, OHA, OSHA, would be noted. And while I did note that, let's see, that Mitch had made comment about talking to housekeepers, that maybe on the next meeting that this would be discussed, that maybe a little more information could be forthcoming from not only the industry, but also the medical half, since that seems to be a major part of the concern.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson, and we hear you. Part of our job is certainly to balance all the information, and not all the information is as accurate as we would like, so we have to make those judgments and go. So thank you, and you're right, we have tabled it. I hope the message is clear that we need everybody's participation to keep the citizenry and workers and our school kids safe and get the economy back rolling. So, all right. Were there any other comments in the council chamber?
No, sir.
Okay. And Ron, you didn't have any more in, or? Okay. Anything from city councilors? Councilor Hinton.
I just have one question, COVID related, and this is to Mr. Chandler. And we were talking at our last meeting about how it's hard to track the people who gather indoors, of 10 or more. I'm just wondering how that monitoring has been going, and we do have those larger VRDs that can house up to 16. So I'm just kind of curious how we're monitoring that and how we're doing with what we find out.
If you're specifically referencing the vacation rental dwellings, there's a couple of things that we're doing. The first is to try to identify those who are advertising for a larger amount, so that we get an idea of who is trying to get more people in. We've also adjusted some of the hours of, or the duties of our VRD enforcement officer to include, we have a fairly good list that we've gathered over the last several weeks of potential violators, and that he is working with management companies to try to ensure that that is not taking place. And so part of what a little bit of a change in philosophy. Part of what we've done in the past, or one of the main things we've done in the past, is that if somebody was violating the term like that, we would try to do it at that moment. But there's nothing that prevents us from going after the fact and saying, you violated the term of your license on this date by halving. And so we're looking both at the moment, if we have somebody who's available, and also looking at a kind of an after the fact when we learn of things, and that comes through also requesting and auditing check-in books.
Great. Thank you, Ron. Any other comments from council? All right. Thank you, Abby, for your work, and we'll keep feeding information back to you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your time and your input as well.
All right. All right, with that, then